You are kneeling on cold stone as the morning bells begin to ring. Salt wind cuts through your wool veil, candles tremble. Somewhere beyond the abbey walls, the sea groans like a living thing. You have been taught that this island is the edge of the world, a holy place where violence cannot cross. But then the bells stop, and the screams begin. You are kneeling on cold stone as the morning bells begin to ring. Salt wind cuts through your wool veil, candles tremble. Somewhere beyond the abbey walls, the sea groans like a living thing. You have been taught that this island is the edge of the world, a holy place where violence cannot cross. But then the bells stop, and the screams begin. What happened to the nuns of Lindisfarne was not just a massacre. It was something far more deliberate, something worse than death. You are taught that the sea is a wall, not of stone or iron, but of God's will. Each morning, Lindisfarne rises from the mist like a prayer half-spoken. The tide pulls away, revealing the narrow causeway, and for a few sacred hours, the island is connected to the world of men. Then the water returns, and you are sealed inside holiness again. You kneel on cold stone floors worn smooth by generations of knees. The air smells of salt, wax, and old vellum. Candles flicker, their flames bending whenever the wind slips through the cracks in the abbey walls. Outside, seabirds cry, sharp, restless sounds, but inside there is only chant, breath, and obedience. You believe this place is protected. Everyone does. Lindisfarne is not just an island, it is a promise. Built where land ends and the unknown begins, it is said that evil cannot cross the water without God's permission. The monks speak of miracles here, of saints whose bones heal the sick, of manuscripts written by hands guided by heaven itself. Even kings kneel when they arrive. And you are small inside all of this, quiet, grateful. Perhaps you were sent here as a child, handed over with relief rather than grief. Perhaps the world outside was too loud, too dangerous, too hungry for a girl's body. Here, no man looks at you. Here, your name matters less than your silence. The bell rings. It always rings. Its sound spreads across the island like a heartbeat, slow, steady, eternal. You rise when it tells you to rise. You bow when it tells you to bow. Choice dissolves into routine, and routine feels like safety. At night, you listen to the sea batter the rocks below the cliffs. You imagine it as a guardian, endlessly circling, endlessly watching. The darkness beyond the waves feels distant, unreal, like a story meant to frighten children into obedience. You do not know that the sea is not a wall. It is a road, and somewhere beyond the horizon, oars are cutting into the water, not yet visible, not yet heard, carrying men who do not fear your God, your bells, or your silence at all. Obedience is easier when it is framed as love. You learn this slowly, the way water wears down stone. No one forces you to stay. No one locks the doors. Instead, the rules are spoken softly, wrapped in scripture, repeated until they feel like your own thoughts. Silence is devotion. Hunger is purity. Endurance is holiness. You wake before the sun, fingers stiff with cold as you pull rough wool over your skin. Prayer comes before warmth. Prayer comes before food. Always prayer first. The body is something to be managed. They call it a calling, a gentle word meant to suggest divine invitation, as if God leaned close and whispered your name, and you answered freely. But most of the women here arrive with no memory of being asked. Some are sent as children, their futures decided before they learn how to refuse. A daughter is expensive. A daughter must be married, fed, guarded. A daughter can shame a household with a single mistake. The convent solves all of that. One mouth gone, one risk removed, one soul handed neatly to God. Others come running. From betrothals arranged in rooms they were not allowed to enter, from hands that lingered too long, from homes where obedience was demanded, but protection was not given. The veil becomes a shield, the abbey a place where male desire is not supposed to follow. You do not speak of these reasons aloud. Inside the convent, the past is treated like a stain. It is scrubbed away with prayer, fasting, and silence. New names are given, old identities are buried. The girl you were is framed as something sinful you have escaped. You are told to be grateful. And in many ways you are. The world beyond the island is brutal to women. Here you will not die in childbirth. You will not be traded for alliances. You will not be beaten by a husband who claims Scripture as justification. Compared to that, this life feels merciful. But mercy still has a cost. Your body no longer belongs to you. Neither does your time, your voice, or your future. Everything is placed in God's hands, which in practice means the hands of men who speak for Him. You kneel and accept this because you are told that obedience is the highest form of virtue a woman can achieve. And slowly, dangerously, you begin to believe it. The rules are not written for you to understand. They are written for you to follow. Eat little, speak less, sleep lightly, walk with your eyes lowered. Do not question instruction. Do not linger in thought. Do not imagine a life beyond these walls. Discipline is praised not for what it builds, but what it erases. Your hunger becomes a companion, a quiet ache that reminds you of your devotion. Pain is reframed as closeness to Christ. Weakness is proof that the body is losing its hold on the soul. When you faint during prayer, you are carried away gently, praised for your endurance once you wake. No one asks if you are well. Your world shrinks to the rhythm of bells. They tell you when to rise, when to kneel, when to eat, when to sleep. Time itself stops belonging to you. Days blur together until memory feels unnecessary. Even joy is regulated. Laughter is rare. Touch is brief and purposeful. You wake to a sound that does not belong. Not the bell, not the wind, not the sea and its endless breathing. This sound is sharper. Wood striking wood, a deep rhythmic thud that vibrates through the ground before it reaches your ears. Shouting follows, not prayer, not Latin, something raw and animal. By the time you reach the doorway, the sky is already bruised with smoke. Shapes move along the shoreline where there should be none. Long shadows, men running, fire blooming where fire has never been allowed to touch. For a moment, your mind refuses to accept it. This is Lindisfarne. This is holy ground. Violence is something that happens elsewhere, to other people, in stories meant to remind you why obedience matters. Then the screaming starts. The first monk you see is bleeding from the mouth, his hands shaking as he clutches a reliquary to his chest. Another stumbles past you, eyes wide, robes darkening with red. Someone tries to ring the bell, but the sound fractures, swallowed by chaos. The invaders move fast. They do not kneel. They do not hesitate. Their hair is wild, their clothes unfamiliar, their weapons terrifyingly solid. Axes rise and fall with brutal efficiency. Swords do not argue theology. You press yourself against the wall, heart pounding so hard it feels like it might break your ribs.
Your prayers come out tangled, breathless, useless. Where is God? Where are the angels? Where is the protection you were promised? The abbey fills with smoke and confusion. Sacred spaces collapse into noise and terror. The altar becomes just another surface to be climbed over, knocked aside, stained. This is not a test of faith. This is not martyrdom. This is slaughter. And it has arrived without warning, without mercy, at the very edge of the world you were told could not be reached. They move through the abbey like a storm given hands. The chapel doors are forced open, candles are kicked aside, the sound of splintering wood echoes against stone that has only ever held hymns. Men shout to one another in a language that crashes rather than flows. You watch a monk fall to his knees, hands raised, lips forming a prayer that is never finished. An axe answers him instead. Relics are torn from their places, gold flashes in the firelight, jewels meant to glorify God are ripped free and stuffed into bloodied sacks. Bones of saints scatter across the floor, trampled under boots that do not recognize them. Something inside you breaks. Not loudly.
The sea that once guarded you now carries you away. Your feet slip on wet sand as you are forced toward the boats. The tide is low, exposing the causeway like a wound. You remember believing this water was a boundary, a divine lock that sealed Lindisfarne away from harm. Now it is nothing more than a road, wide open, obedient to men who understand it better than prayer ever taught you. Hands shove you forward, rope tightens. The boat rocks beneath unfamiliar weight, and panic surges as you are thrown inside among other women, tangled veils, shaking bodies, breath coming too fast. Someone retches. Someone whispers the Lord's Prayer over and over, like a spell that might still work if spoken enough times. The men laugh. Their language is sharp, filled with sounds that feel like blows. They point, gesture, argue. You cannot understand the words, but you understand the tone. You are being counted, assessed, divided. The oars dip into the water. As the boat pulls away, you turn your head just enough to see the island one last time. Smoke still rises from the abbey. The bell tower stands blackened, silent, accusing the sky. No one follows. No rescue comes. The waves slap against the hull in a rhythm that feels cruelly calm. The sea does not mourn. It does not rage. It simply carries you farther from everything you have ever known. Someone's shoulder presses into yours. A stranger's fear feels exactly like your own. There are no sisters now, only captives. By the time Lindisfarne disappears into the mist, you understand something with terrifying clarity. You are not being taken to be killed. You are being taken to be used. And that knowledge is heavier than chains. Time loses meaning on the water. You are cold, always cold. Spray soaks your clothes, stiffens the wool against your skin. Your wrists ache from the rope. When you ask for water, quietly, desperately, the response is laughter, a shove, a word you do not know, but will come to hate. You begin to learn their language without being taught. A tug on the rope means move. A blow means stop. A glance held too long means danger. They do not see your veil as sacred. They rip it away, fingers rough in your hair. One man grips your chin, turning your face toward the light, examining you like survival does not announce itself as a choice. It arrives quietly, disguised as small compromises you barely notice yourself making. You learn which movements draw attention and which make you invisible. You learn when to lower your eyes, when to still your body,
when to hold your breath. You are given work, grinding grain until your arms shake, carrying water in vessels too heavy for your frame, cleaning blood from floors where animals are slaughtered without ceremony. Labor replaces prayer. Exhaustion replaces hunger as your constant companion. No one asks who you were. Your past has no value here. Names are unnecessary. You respond to gestures, to tone, to force. You are not beaten every day, only enough to teach you what will happen if you forget your place. You watch other women change, too. Some harden, their faces sharpening into masks of calculation. Some disappear, traded, taken, moved on. A few learn how to smile at the right moments, how to anticipate desire before it is demanded. You try not to judge them. Judgment belongs to a life where morality is still a luxury. At night, when you lie on rough furs staring into darkness, memories surface uninvited. The bell, the salt air, the rhythm of chant. You clutch them like relics, terrified that if you let go, there will be nothing left of you at all. But memory alone does not keep you alive. Adaptation does. And slowly, painfully, you begin to understand the rules of this new world, not written, not spoken, but enforced with absolute clarity. Faith does not vanish all at once. It erodes. At first you pray in secret, lips barely moving, afraid even God might hear and abandon you for your doubt. You pray for rescue, for death, for anything that will restore meaning to what has been taken. Nothing comes. Days turn into seasons. The land freezes, thaws, blooms, and dies again. You are still here, still owned, still breathing. You begin to ration your prayers, not because you stop believing, but because each unanswered plea feels like a betrayal. It is easier to believe that God has turned his face away than to keep calling out into silence. Years later, men will write about Lindisfarne. They will write about shattered altars and stolen gold, about holy books burned and saints' bones scattered. They will call it the beginning of an age of terror, the moment the world realized it was no longer safe. They will name the monks who died, martyrs, heroes of faith, men whose deaths could be shaped into meaning. You will not appear in their accounts. The women taken alive rarely do. History prefers clean endings, blood sanctified by death, suffering that can be framed as noble and brief. What happened to you was neither. It was slow, complicated, uncomfortable. Survival does not fit easily into sermons or chronicles. No one records how long it takes to forget the sound of the bell. No one writes about the way memory erodes, first the words of prayer, then the order of rituals, then the certainty that they ever mattered. No one notes how identity slips away, not through violence alone, but through repetition, through days that demand obedience without explanation. You become a shadow in other people's stories, a nameless captive, a foreign woman, a footnote if that. And perhaps that is the final cruelty, not what was done to you, but how easily it was erased. You live long enough to stop counting the years. Your body carries marks that never fade, scars, a limp, the dull ache of old injuries that surface when the weather turns. You learn the rhythms of this land as intimately as you once knew the tides of Lindisfarne. Sometimes, in quiet moments, fragments return. The smell of wax, the echo of chant, the feeling of cold stone beneath your knees. They arrive without warning and leave you hollowed out when they go. You do not speak of them. There is no language here for that life, no patience for grief that cannot be solved with work or violence. So you carry it alone, folded carefully inside yourself, like a relic no one else would recognize. If God still exists for you, he is different now, smaller, quieter, no longer a protector, but a witness. You stop